Is this crazy? We stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in the history. Make America great again. How can you be against it?
It is the golden era of pardons in the Trump White House, at least for supporters and donors of President Trump. Welcome to Sidebar from the Washington Post. I'm Libby Casey, here with Rhonda Colvin and James Hohmann, and our special guest, Dan Lamothe, who covers the military and Pentagon for the Post. Welcome, Dan. So we're going to talk pardons today, but we're also going to talk about Dan's reporting on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the drama happening under his watch at the Pentagon. You know, Dan, Hegseth has been like the most microscoped member of Trump's cabinet, really, so far. And he's yet again under that microscope, but this time because of some of the dissension and chaos happening under his leadership. Why are you looking at this story?
I thought it was important to kind of dig in. We had a flurry of stories in April that kind of looked at the resignations, the firings, the number of people who had been kind of pushed out of the Pentagon on his senior staff. And really, this story started with a question of like, okay, who's left? Is this working? Are these people able to get along? Are they, credible and capable people who can do the jobs they have assigned to them? So kind of just working my way through some of these names. Some of these individuals have been with him since day one. Some of these people are people that were kind of in the orbit of the Pentagon, but really have only joined his senior staff in recent weeks.
So you've reported on this fracture within Hegseth's inner circle that's gotten sort of so bad that it's even attracting attention at the White House. Dan, talk to us about some of these factions and who is aligning themselves with other players in Hegseth's orbit. Where are the divisions?
Yeah, I think the most notable figure in this story and a number of the other Hegseth stories of late is a guy named Ricky Burria. He's a Marine Corps colonel who is actually in the process of retiring now. He's still actually not quite out of the Marine Corps, but still has this political advisor job anyway now. He's somebody who has sort of like openly auditioned to be the next chief of staff. He's tried to position himself in a way where he can have those roles. He has been given those roles on an acting basis right now. And I have yet to meet many people who have great things to say about the way he's been doing his job and sort of the way he prioritizes, seemingly, according to numerous sources, his own ambition over sort of the mission and the broader Defense Department.
So who is he having like disagreements or schisms with?
Virtually everybody else to some degree in that office, with the exception, importantly, of it appears that the Defense Secretary and the Defense Secretary's wife, Jennifer Hegseth, both are sort of behind him, support him, see value in him. And that is sort of how he ended up elevated in at least a temporary fashion as the acting chief of staff, with no real sense whether or not the White House lets this go on a permanent basis, whether they send other replacements, and whether those would be someone who would step in and he would sort of take a side job still in the front office, or whether he would just, get swept out altogether.
So, James, I understand how important a chief of staff is when we're talking about the White House structure, but how important is a chief of staff when we're talking about a department like the Defense Department?
And this is the largest organization in the world. It's Dan knows better than I do the exact numbers, but it's more than 2 million employees. It's people spread out across the world, including, very sensitive operations. And it's a lot of different theaters. It's really the most complex organization that exists. And Secretary Hegseth, unlike recent secretaries, lacks a lot of management experience, especially at this level. And so normally the chief of staff is important. In this case, even more so, because they really are making a lot of calls that on things that aren't elevating to SecDef.
So President Trump himself was asked about the Pentagon's acting chief of staff. So let's listen to this exchange.
Secretary Hegseth's acting chief of staff is a Biden administration holdover who has said some very critical things about you and Vice President Vance. Do your thoughts on that?
Who is the chief of staff?
Ricky Berea.
I have no idea who he is, but if he did say that, I would recommend that we don't take him. I mean, if he did say something like that, I would recommend we don't take him. But let's see. I'll take a look. Perea, I'll check it out.
So, Dan, it's like you never want that. You never want your name said in quite that way. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I thought notable, right? I mean, the way I framed this to some of the people I was talking to is I believe this is the first time that Ricky Berea's name has crossed the president's lips. That's a awkward place to be when you're still sort of, to some degree, auditioning for a job. The journalist there, I don't know where he's getting his reporting. I don't have a lot of sourcing that would suggest that he's bad-mouthing Trump and Vice President Vance. We actually put in our story that we could not independently verify that. But I still found it important and notable that other people are raising that to the president, and he's at least hearing that. So I think that the next questions for me would be, okay, the president now has his attention on this to some degree. Is he just going to go to Hegseth and say, hey, what's the deal here? And Secretary Hegseth says, hey, he's fine. This is just people with knives out for Berea, my guy. And it kind of just, we move on with life and it goes on as it is. Or is there a deeper level of research? Does somebody like Susan Wiles at the White House take a peek here and say, hey, there's an awful lot of smoke here in terms of the way this is going. There doesn't seem to be a lot of control of this front office, even after several people were fired that were kind of cast as the problems. If you fire numerous people and yet you still have problems anyway, were those people actually the problems in the first place?
So, Rhonda, there's nothing that raises Trump's hackles more than being told someone's been talking negatively about him and JD Vance, right? So there's the question of like, who is this guy and what has he been saying about us? Is Trump only going to be concerned, right, if it's like, this guy was talking smack about you?
I mean, he might be, but I do think the White House has shown that they are concerned about the turmoil at the Pentagon and how it really hasn't stopped since Pete Hegseth was nominated for this position. I remember covering Pete Hegseth's tour on the Hill. He spent weeks meeting with lawmakers before the confirmation process. And there was a lot of talk about, does this guy have it? Should we be concerned that he would be leading the biggest department in our country? So I think Trump and the White House, they've been doing constant damage control. And I think that might outweigh Trump being concerned that he's just, there was this aide talking about him.
The underlying thing that's motivating some of these comments, we don't know that he's actually been criticizing Trump or Vance, but he was the military aide to Lloyd Austin. He was a holdover from the previous administration. Again, he's career military.
Yeah, the other thing to set Trump off is to say somebody's a Biden holdover.
Exactly. Right. And so that's, I think, maybe what the reporter was trying to get at, and so this idea that this is a Biden person.
And to put the two together.
And
right.
to kind of conflate the two. And Dan's story, which is tremendous, notes the tension between this guy Berea and another guy who it seems like the two of them have been at loggerheads, and it does seem like the knives are out, not just externally, but internally as well.
Dan, James gave us some context on how sort of mighty and important the Pentagon is in terms of like just sheer staffing and power, also budget, of course. But is this different than knives out and fighting happening at like the Labor Department or the Interior Department?
I mean, point was made by numerous people as I was doing these interviews, and with 17 years in the building as a reporter, I mean, I can see it. You can have these conflicts pretty much until you can't, right? Like on a regular basis, no crisis of note at the current moment. Okay, this is where we are. But the moment there's a new invasion somewhere, the moment there is some sort of like unforeseen set of circumstances, the classic 3 a.m. phone call sort of discussion. Can those things coexist? Can you have this level of backstabbing going on, this level of confusion going on with some sort of major national security implications also playing out simultaneously? We haven't really seen that yet. And the concern is at some point it's inevitable, just based on history, things always pop off. You never quite know when. Recent example that the dynamics with India and Pakistan have settled down. But if that had gone in a different direction and you had this going on at the same time, can that coexist?
Yeah, you did this reporting about the tension between Beria and another one of Hegseth's aides. And this is a retired soldier who's been with Hegseth for the long haul. You share that Hegseth credits him with being a mentor when they served together in Iraq. So tell us about the other player here and how he's trying to sort of retain some power and agency there at DOD.
This is somebody who has serious credibility in combat and otherwise as a leader and as a mentor for Hegseth. This is somebody who Hegseth, on his single deployment to Iraq, Eric Garrissey, this individual, was a first sergeant, a relatively senior enlisted rank in the Army, kind of guiding these soldiers through a very difficult deployment, which included war crimes allegations in one of the junior groups of soldiers. Garrissey came out on the other side of that, actually received the Silver Star for a later deployment, and went on to serve for another 10 or 15 years thereafter. So for me, that individual, if that individual is frequently frustrated, threatening to resign, that is a potential canary in the coal mine situation.
Dan, really a fan of the work you've been doing on covering this and the mood at the Pentagon right now. When I covered Hegseth's confirmation, I kept wondering, will this eventually affect rank and file members of the military? And I know it's hard to interview people who are current and active military members, but having someone at the top who doesn't quite have the experience level of past defense secretaries, and having all of this turmoil, and having people like family members on a Signal chat, do we have any way to know how people are feeling, the rank and file in the Pentagon and also just active military right now?
I'm talking to people up and down the chain of command all the time. And I think there's an assumption, we've actually seen it with some of the recent new media restrictions that the Hegseth team is trying to put in place. They think all these conversations are happening in the Pentagon. I'm having rolling conversations with people all over the country and really all over the world based on where the U.S. military is. These are people that you meet along the way, you stay in touch. So there are still, to this moment, people in uniform right now who are thrilled to see Pete Hegseth kind of mixing it up, throwing punches, shaking up the military, making major changes to structure, firing generals. There are people who are eating this stuff up, even in uniform. But there are also, and I think notably, there is fatigue on how this is playing out. There, I think, was hope that once we got through confirmation, a page might be turned, and at some point we would shift to sort of day-to-day stuff. But I don't think we can undersell how damaged the defense secretary was through that confirmation process. I mean, lay it flat. This is somebody who had openly admitted to paying off an individual who had threatened, suggested that she had been sexually assaulted by him. There was no charges. There was no, prosecution or anything like that. But that's an ugly allegation that emerged only through the confirmation process. Hegseth kind of came in with that baggage, confirmed on the narrow list of party line votes, and has been dogged by that ever since. And then you add on top of that the mistakes made through the Signalgate incident, the way he handled the Signalgate incident, where he basically has insisted that nothing happened wrong, when a lot of service members, including people who support him behind the scenes, are saying that wasn't handled right and he should have handled that differently.
Dan Lamothe covers the Pentagon and the military for the Washington Post. Thanks so much, Dan. Really appreciate you coming on. Everybody else, stay with us. We're talking pardons after this. And also Elon Musk. He's peaced out. Stay tuned for more. You're listening to Sidebar from the Washington Post. A reminder, you can find us in your favorite podcast app, or you can watch and listen along with us on YouTube. Just search for the Washington Post. Okay, we finally got a number from the White House. We saw 17 pardons and 8 commutations yesterday alone. President Trump has issued a lot of them in recent days, and they're going to some famous people, some people who've admitted wrongdoing, some people who've donated to the Trump campaign or have loved ones who've given Trump money. Let's dive in, guys. The most famous among them are TV reality stars Julie and Todd Chrisley. Rhonda, who the heck are the Chrisleys?
So the
I know you know.
The Chrisleys had a popular reality show on USA. It ran 10 seasons. They are a couple from the Atlanta area, their Southern accents were definitely prominent in the show. But they sort of had a glam lifestyle. They had a few kids, and the show just followed them in their day-to-day life, living this glam lifestyle near Atlanta. They were convicted on tax crimes, tax evasion, and Todd Chrisley was supposed to spend it looks like he was expected to be released in April of 2032. That's how long his sentence was. And his wife, Julie, was going to be in prison until 2028.
Yeah, he got 12 years, she got 7 years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They were pardoned. Their daughter, who has been sort of a personality on Instagram, she announced this week that President Trump called her directly as she was walking into Sam's Club and told her that her parents would be pardoned.
I just want to stay with what they were accused of real quick, just before we get into their daughter and sort of her MAGA connections and stuff. I mean, they were accused of taking over $36 million in fake loans. And then they used that to buy all the stuff that made them famous on their TV show, right? This was like bankrolling this luxury lifestyle, and they didn't pay taxes.
Right. And then once they did make money off the TV show, they hid the money and tried to do a bunch of stuff to get out of the taxes. They created all sorts of fraudulent documents to be able to take those loans so that they could buy the designer clothes and the high priced cars and the real estate and the travel. It's textbook bank fraud.
So their daughter, Savannah, has been leading the charge for their pardons, Rhonda, and she's found an ear in Donald Trump. Tell us more about what she's been agitating for.
Yeah, well, people, if they did not watch the show, they may have seen her as someone who campaigned for Donald Trump. She was at the RNC last summer.
We heard her speak.
Yeah, we were there. We heard her speak. She feels that her parents were victims of the judicial system, that they were attacked because they were, quote, the Trumps of the South. And she said that's a badge she wears proudly. But she has been in the forefront talking about how her parents have been wrongfully accused and imprisoned.
All right, well, we're going to listen to a clip from her at the RNC, but I do want to point out that even though she has said that this has just been like a persecution of them, the judge who sentenced the couple said this: "I cannot ignore the greed and flamboyance in this case." But let's listen to how Savannah sees it.
My name is Savannah Chrisley, and you may have seen my family on TV, but for the past decade, we've been consumed with a different kind of drama. My family was persecuted by rogue prosecutors in Fulton County due to our public profile and conservative beliefs. They accused my parents of fraud. We need to rise above the persecution. We need to hold rogue prosecutors accountable. We need to expose the Democrats' corruption, and better yet, the Biden family's corruption.
So what's wild there, for those watching, she says Fulton County, and that's clearly an effort to make it seem like it was Fani Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County, who also charged Trump, when in fact, the person who brought the charge was BJ Pack, who was the U.S. attorney for Georgia, who was nominated by Trump. But the way she says it, you'd think it was Willis going after her folks as well.
So Trump agrees that they were like gone after, that the sentence was too tough. It is fascinating when you see a lot of Savannah Chrisley's like social media pictures and stuff. She's got a lot of MAGA gear on, like she's really in the fold, and that's an important relationship. James, what are other examples of pardons that have come out with people with significant relationships to MAGA?
So one that is closer to home for Washington is on Monday, Trump announced this pardon of a former Culpeper County, Virginia sheriff, Scott Jenkins. He was convicted of serious federal bribery and fraud charges in December. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was on tape accepting cash from FBI agents who pretended to be rich guys who he was selling badges to be like deputy sheriffs so that they could carry concealed weapons, and that if they got pulled over, they could flash their badge and get out of traffic tickets. And so he was running this badge sale operation. And he also happened to be a big outspoken Trump supporter. And when the sheriff, former sheriff now, was pardoned, this guy, Ed Martin, who Trump has named the Justice Department pardon attorney, who was going to be the U.S. attorney for D.C., but then couldn't get enough Republican votes in the Senate. He said on Twitter, "No MAGA left behind." And it really gets at the motive here, which is this isn't about someone being railroaded. This is a Trump supporter, and they're trying to help Trump supporters. And they see that as their role at the Justice Department, which they no longer believe to be independent.
Rhonda, let's talk about people who have financially either donated or attended expensive events that Trump has been involved in. How have those people benefited?
Okay, so one person who has raised eyebrows is Paul Walczak. He was a Florida nursing home executive who in April was pardoned by Trump. Days before that pardon, his mom, who is a GOP donor, received an invitation to attend $1 million dinner at Mar-a-Lago. So that has raised eyebrows and goes along with what James just said about the idea of no MAGA left behind. He is someone where his mother evidently did have some connection days before this pardon with Trump and Mar-a-Lago and a big money fundraiser.
Ahmad Zabari got a commutation. This is a big dollar donor who's given more than $1 million to Trump and Republican groups. He had been sentenced on campaign finance charges.
He was convicted of trying to cover up the source of some foreign money that had come in. He had been a Democratic donor who switched to Trump in 2016 and then gave a lot of money to his 2017 inauguration. So it was all related to that.
Another ideological one, a former Army lieutenant who was convicted in a military court for disobeying COVID protocols back in 2022. He got a pardon. And then one that really caught attention yesterday in our circles here in Washington was former Congressman Michael Grimm. What happened, James?
So before he was in Congress, he had a restaurant in Manhattan and basically committed fraud. And he ended up, this was a while ago, but he's, I believe, the 8th former House Republican who has been pardoned by Donald Trump between the two terms, who had been convicted of fraud or corruption.
And he goes on TV and says wonderful things about Donald Trump. So, Rhonda, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think you can make two things. One, as James has pointed out, it does seem like these pardons are going to Trump loyalists. That seems to be the theme. And that was a little bit of the theme, too, in his first administration as well, when he pardoned people. Most pardons often happen toward the end of a presidency. It's something that has served as a way of presidents reflecting on different sentences or families that have appealed to presidents for a loved one they feel is incarcerated with a long sentence. With a Biden and Obama, you saw a lot of sentences related to marijuana or drug offenses be commuted or pardoned. With George W. Bush, I found that there were a lot of alcohol-related crimes where he pardoned or did some sort of act of clemency. But with Trump, it's very different. It's a lot of crimes that a lot of people may think he may be sympathetic to, a lot of crimes that he and his business have faced.
You know, something else stands out, and we haven't seen this happen yet, but it is certainly newsworthy. Trump has said that he is looking at pardoning the people who are convicted of conspiracy in the kidnapping attempt of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, of course, a Democrat. Let's listen to how he talked about it.
Will you pardon the people who are accused of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer?
I'm going to look at it. I will take a look at it. It's been brought to my attention. I did watch the trial. It looked to me like somewhat of a railroad job. I'll be honest with you. It looked to me like some people said some stupid things. You know, they were drinking, and I think they said stupid things. But I'll take a look at that. And a lot of people are asking me that question from both sides, actually. A lot of people think they got railroaded.
James?
So they were convicted, and the prosecutor said in the closing arguments, this wasn't some random thing. These were guys sitting outside of a woman's house with night vision goggles and a plan to kidnap or kill her. And They have argued that they were entrapped by undercover FBI agents, but they were really planning something pretty awful during COVID. And Trump really is basically with this. And they're also looking at some of the people who got commutations on January 6th. Like, remember, Trump pardoned almost everyone, but a few of the worst cases like Stewart Rhodes got commutations instead of pardons. And one of the things that Trump and Ed Martin are also looking at is issuing formal pardons to those guys. And again, it goes back to that. If you were with Trump, if you're MAGA, we'll protect you.
Let's talk about Elon Musk, who has left government. He's sharing how things are going now on his social media platform X. James, no surprise that he ultimately left because the clock was ticking because of the way he was part of government. He didn't have to disclose his financials and stuff like that, but he had a limited time to be able to serve.
Yeah, and it does appear, I mean, the White House is sort of distancing themselves from Elon. They say he phased out weeks ago. He hasn't been working. And Elon is saying, I'm wrapping up this week. He gave an interview to CBS where he reflected on his time. Something very fascinating is that he criticized Trump's tax bill that
the big,
passed the
beautiful
House.
bill.
He said it could be big or it can be beautiful, but it can't be both. One thing that's really fascinating is Katie Miller, who worked in the Trump administration, appears to be now working for Musk. She's going to work for him. Her husband is Stephen Miller. And so Stephen Miller today is attacking Elon Musk for his criticism of the tax bill, while his wife is now a spokeswoman for Elon.
So Elon had talked about sticking around, like having a couple days here and there where he'd do Washington. Rhonda, has that plan evaporated?
It appears that it has. And, to our credit and a lot of reporters' credit, we've talked on this show about that there would be a breaking point with Musk. It just seemed to be going in that direction, and I think they've hit that direction right now. He made those comments to CBS, but he's also been talking to other media. And I noticed a few weeks ago, he did say that he would also scale back on political contributions. And that's notable because he gave a lot of money to Republicans who were in competitive House races in the last election, could have, put a few of them over the edge and given the Republicans the majority that they now have. But as he's leaving, one thing that is notable to think about is even if he's done with the government, there's a lot that he's leaving, in his wake. Yesterday, Tanya Chutkan, a federal judge, said that the attorney generals who are suing Musk and DOGE, that their lawsuits could continue to go on because they are accusing him of unconstitutionally canceling government contracts, laying off people, accessing databases. So even if he's removed, what he did with DOGE is still going on, and the effects of that are still ringing here in Washington and beyond.
It really is pretty striking how he made a mess. He's leaving a mess behind, but he really didn't bend the cost curve of government. And that's one of the things he's talking about.
He did not save a bunch of money. That was the whole point.
He didn't save the money. He came in, and it's important to remember, this wasn't that long ago that he came in and said there was all this waste, fraud, and abuse, and that there were all these dead people collecting Social Security benefits. And he never really substantiated any of these big claims. He got inside all the systems. He mucked around.
He ripped things apart.
And he's leaving a lot that's very broken. But he didn't actually fix any of these problems. He also couldn't substantiate his claims that the government is, that it's this simple thing to fix. And it's a classic example, I think, of the worst kind of hubris that you get from Silicon Valley, where these tech guys think that they know everything, that it's very easy, and then they come in and realize this is actually pretty hard, and then sort of give up and move on to the next thing.
But was it ultimately a success, James, because he did rip apart the federal government workforce?
In terms of, was it worth it? For him, he's worth a lot less money than he was in November. There's frustration on Tesla's board and among shareholders that he's been so distracted that the company has sort of lost a lot of support from its target market. And, I think that there's a desire for him to focus again on Tesla and SpaceX, because he has been in this manic phase of Washington for the last 6 months.
James Hohmann, Rhonda Colvin, thank you so much to both of you. James is always in a manic phase of Washington, but only in the best way, James.
I'm
only
not
in the
going
best
anywhere.
way. We'll talk to you next week, guys. Sidebar broadcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Appreciate you listening and watching along with us. We'll talk to you soon.